Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Shea Anything podcast. It is Doug Williams and Keith Hernandez with you. Full disclosure, though, we taped today's episode on Wednesday, a day early. And we, of course, heard the news of Tom Seaver's passing and wanted to add Keith's thoughts on him and his friend before we get into what we originally taped. So we will play that for you. But Keith has been kind enough to join us again to discuss this news. Keith, first of all, my condolences to you. Tell us about the man. What was he like, and what were your experiences with him like?
Well, when I came over in '83, Tom was on the team. Tom was, I felt, on the back end of his career. I didn't think at that period in his life, in his career, I should say, that he was really happy with baseball. I know that when he retired, that he never watched a game again. It's tough when you become an older statesman in baseball. And I experienced it when I got older. I went where all of a sudden you're 37, 38, 39 or 40, and everybody's in their early to mid 20s. And there is a generation gap there. And all of your old teammates, in Tom's case, from 69 and the 70s, they're gone. And he's the last man standing. So, and Tom wasn't a real gregarious guy. Was a very intelligent. That's why he was such a great pitcher. It not only translated in his profession, but also in his life. He was a very, very, very bright guy and a highly successful man. I got to know him in that second half of the season because I worked the crossword puzzle of the New York Times, and so did he. And I kind of needled him a little bit. And I remember Ed Lynch coming up to me later and saying, no one needles Tom Seaver. It was like, and Tom loved it and gave it back. So I think that's how our friendship began. And then, of course, when he retired, we didn't really kind of see much of each other when he came to the ballpark occasionally, which is very rare. But when I retired, and we were all into wine, and he was very close with Rusty Staub. We've lost two now within a 2-year period. Very sad. So we became friends on a whole different level where it had nothing to do, I shouldn't say nothing to do, minimum to do about baseball and all about wine and fine dining. And so that's a part that I'll remember and cherish about Tom. I didn't play for him in his prime. I did face him in his prime. If you look at my numbers, I hit under 200 against him. He was very, very nasty and powerful pitcher. Hard stuff, no change-ups and all this stuff. He had hard breaking ball, hard fastball, came right after you. Here I am on the mound, Tom Seaver. You better get your fighting shoes on, because I'm coming after you.
What you're describing is so fascinating, because it sounds like you guys, and you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, had some similarities. I mean, you're both doing the crosswords. I've talked to you about this before, but after you retired, you, for a brief period of time, had no interest in baseball. And it sounds like, he moved on and obviously was all in on his vineyard and wine as a business. And I'm just curious, did it feel like that in your friendship with him, that you guys had some similarities, whether it was about just the way you ticked and about how you viewed baseball and how you viewed life after baseball?
I don't know. I didn't really give it much thought. We did have some similarities in the fact that we didn't watch baseball. I didn't for a while. His career ended, he wasn't the same pitcher, and he knew it. And but he was smart enough to know how to pitch. He didn't have the fastball he used to have, and he became an entirely different pitcher and a smart pitcher. He was smart when he had the overpowering stuff. He finished on a high note. He had 300 wins, and for me, I didn't get to 3,000 hits. For me, I would have loved to have gotten the 2,500 hits. I think I would have if it was those strike and lockout years. I think cost me the 2,500 hits. I feel really blessed that I was able to get to know him, play with him. I would have loved to have played with him in his prime. I got to compete against him in his prime when I was very young. What a great experience. I have that visual of me in the box, standing in the box, and I can visualize Tom Seaver on the mound, and I can visualize his pitches coming in. I have a great remembrance of them because they were just so over the top, above head and shoulders above most everybody in the league. You remember those guys. So, and I have this visual, certain at bats, what I did and how he got me out. And I got him a few times, but I never beat him. So I don't know. I didn't really answer your question. It's a tough answer. I never really thought of it in terms of.
Yeah, it makes sense that you haven't thought of it. It was just something that listening to you kind of struck me. But, my first reaction when I heard the news last night was, 75 is too young. And, when he retired from public life, what a shame that was for him and his family, but for Mets fans, and that he was ill. And it was just the saddest thing. And everybody knew that he wasn't in great health, but this still came as a shock. And as somebody who, obviously you work in the SNY booth and you're still very much one of the faces of the Mets organization. How much of an opportunity was missed there that Tom's health was failing at an age where he really should have still been able to be one of the faces of the franchise, even in retirement?
Well, it's just tragic that he wasn't able to be a part of the '69 reunion last year. Tom Seaver not there. It was because of his health. Not being able to be there when they honored him with the naming, Seaver Way at the ballpark was the official address, which is very appropriate, I feel. I forgot too. I got to work in the booth with him when he was doing Met games when I was just first starting. So we had fun in the booth together. And I remember him being very acute, sharp mentally, a real quick wit, a wizard, and knew the game. And then to know, because my mother had Alzheimer's, so I'm very much aware of what dementia is and how debilitating it is. And I know how bad it is when you're on your last legs. You're at the end, and it's just you're just whittled down to nothing. And to see that such a man who served in the Marine Corps, when everybody not everybody forgets about it, but everybody thinks about baseball. He was a Marine, and an All-American at SC. I remember that. Grew up in Northern California. We heard about Tom Seaver down in SC back in the Rod Dedeaux days when they were winning championships every year. And then I just know for him, the state that he's in, because I can visualize my mother. And I can sympathize with Nancy, who, you've been with them in high school sweethearts. And to see that person deteriorate is tough.
Yeah. That's really, when I was watching the coverage on SNY last night of some of his public appearances before his health started to fail him, and the sharp wit that you're talking about, just the man that he was, taken from us too soon. And I really appreciate your perspective, Keith, because he was your teammate, he was your friend, and every listener of this podcast is a huge Mets fan. And if you're a huge Mets fan, doesn't matter what generation, doesn't matter what age, this news shook you to your core. The franchise, the face of this franchise, the best player in franchise history, Tom Seaver, gone at the age of 75. So,
and just to interrupt real quick, Doug, I was called by SNY to go on last night, and I did not return calls because I know I would have been an emotional wreck. So that's why I didn't participate in all that wonderful coverage that SNY had last night. And I've had tons of calls from other news outlets beginning last night and today, and I'm only going to do the SNY stuff. It's too big a loss.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be tough. I mean, you're going to be with Gary, and Gary Cohen added his emotional perspective to the SNY coverage last night, because
I heard that.
Yeah, a hero of his growing up, and that's really everybody has different perspectives. Yours is so valuable, having played with him and knowing the man that you did, and Gary's was so emotional because, and I heard Howie too. Those two guys grew up idolizing this man, got to know him, and ended up being that hero that before you meet them, you're wondering, will this live up to my expectations? And both of them so clearly had met him and worked with him and realized that this guy was larger than life. And sometimes meeting your heroes has that can let you down, but with Tom Seaver, it never did. So Keith, thank you so much. Again, our condolences go out to you, everybody that knew Tom Seaver, Nancy, his family. What a loss for any Met fan out there. It connected the generations of fans. Nobody did it like Tom Seaver. So Keith, thank you. We will lay out here, and our episode that we taped before this news will start to play. So thanks for listening, everybody. And here comes our original episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Shea Anything podcast. Doug Williams and Keith Hernandez with you, back on schedule this week. Keith is enjoying a nice cheese plate for lunch. We have to interrupt that. We're sorry to do that to you, Keith. How's the season going? Are you staying into it, or has this been wearing on you, these long games and these double headers?
Well, this is such an unusual season with the COVID and the expanded rosters and the taxi squads. I've never seen so many player changes, and it's a lot of players are a lot of injuries. We kind of figured, because they were sat out for so long, no matter what they did to stay in shape, that there were going to be a lot of injuries, and in fact there has been. So there's been a lot of players up that it really hasn't been, in my opinion, a complete major league product. There's been a lot of AAA players up. It's been fine. The 5 games over the weekend with the Yankees, a doubleheader, that was a killer. I had Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday off, and boy, that was right on. It was perfect. Couldn't have been more perfect scheduling, because I was worn out. You had the doubleheader on Friday, and then Saturday was a day game, and then another doubleheader. I remember I have a garage door clicker on my phone, and it tells me how many hours my garage door has been closed. So when I left, I closed the garage door, and I came home. I pressed open, and before I pressed open, it said, "Garage door has been closed for 12 hours."
Yes.
It was a 12-hour day. So, and it was a long day, and I was tired after that weekend, and just sitting on my duff. So it's been a grueling season, but it's getting near the end now. I've got 21 of the 24 left, and we'll push forward. We'll see how it goes.
It's crazy how late it is already, and how quickly this whole season will have gone by. So Keith, the Mets have had their struggles lately, and a lot of times, this is designated Twitter, the name of the segment. A lot of times, Keith, you are quick to get on Twitter when the Mets are struggling to talk Mets fans off the ledge. Hey,
Right.
Sometimes in all caps, sometimes you decide to go lowercase to say, hey guys, this will be okay. It's a long season, and
Right.
Just relax a little bit. It's the ebbs and flows of a baseball season. You have not taken to Twitter to do that. Is that because you just, like we talked about last week or the week before, I forget, that you just don't feel like being on Twitter, or is that because you think that you can't talk Mets fans off the ledge right now, that it's actually a concerning situation with this team?
Well, no matter what, we're into the second month of the season. Well, actually the third month, if you want to count late July. So let's just say we're in the last month of the season. And if it was a season that started in late March, if we were at this point in the season, and the Mets were where they were, it's all relative. it's the same thing. You got X amount of games left, and they have to find a way to turn it around. I haven't gone on Twitter because number one, I forget to go on Twitter, and I just haven't felt compelled. I don't read Twitter, number one, because there's so many goofballs on there, and I really don't want to know what they're talking about. So for my own sanity, I just haven't been felt compelled, because I just, this season is just so coming out of right field that it is what it is. We got a sprint here, and now the sprint is 23 games, I think, and they got to get their act together.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not about even how many games the Mets or any team are under 500 or their record, even though that feels important this year. It's all about games back, because every team makes the playoffs, it feels like. So I think Major League Baseball in the month of September needs to take advantage of the fact, whether it's like when you look at the standings, really displaying to fan bases out there just how close their team is to being a playoff team. And that's what's going to be interesting, is the Mets or any team could be 4 or 5 games under 500 when the season ends and still have a chance to win the World Series and play postseason baseball. We'll see if that happens. We haven't had the chance to talk to you, Keith, since the trade deadline. Robinson Chirinos, potentially new backup catcher, more of an offensive guy. Todd Frazier is an interesting acquisition, the one I want to get your take on, because there's really nowhere for him to play, at least on paper. But maybe that's more of a clubhouse thing. Again, that's what I'll ask you about. Miguel Castro is the reliever they brought in, hard throwing guy, and was a big time prospect with the Blue Jays. So do you think they brought up, they traded for Todd Frazier because of the influence he can have on the clubhouse?
I think that right now the front office is scrambling right now. The bullpen, not the bullpen, the starting rotations really from the injuries. And, if Walker hasn't, and Porcello, they haven't panned out as they would have liked. So that's put a crimp in. You've got Stroman, who takes a hike, from COVID, which is his right. You got Syndergaard. So the whole starting rotation blew up. And pitching is the name of the game. And now they're scrambling for starters, and it's not easy. You just can't pluck a starter out of a low-hanging fruit and pick one out and throw them out there. We saw it with the what's his name, Hirano or whatever his name is. He didn't have too auspicious a debut in the orange and blue, but I think when Frazier, I do believe they need a right-handed bat, and I think that was a concern. There's a DH, don't forget, and the catching. I'm really concerned about Ramos. Those catchers get beat up. And is he at a point in his career now? If I'm thinking this, then the front office has got to be thinking this. Has he reached the end of the line or close to it? I mean, he's just not the same player this year. But then you got this COVID season. Yeah. Everything is just, who knows? Ramos is one of our best hitters, or a clutch hitter, and he just really has struggled. And I think that they're just, that's an insurance policy there, I think. But, Chirinos wasn't playing well, wasn't hitting.
No.
They're hoping for a change of environment. So to me, they're scrambling right now and hoping to catch lightning in a bottle. Now, Frazier, evidently what I read in the paper what we hear from Alonso and McNeil, they love him. He's a little goofy in the clubhouse. Maybe they need that to make them loose, because they are. I saw the expression the other night, the first loss in Baltimore, on Pete's face after that game. It's not a happy camper. I've been there. When you are struggling and you're young and things are expected of you and you go into a lengthy slump, and then when you go in a lengthy slump, it is compounded when the team goes bad. You can go in a slump, and when your team's winning, it's like, oh my, okay, phew, the guys are picking me up. But when you're going south, collectively, and you're slumping, I mean, that look on Pete's face right when the game ended, was it 9-5 loss in Baltimore the first night? That picture says 1,000 words. I've been there. I was watching on TV. I said, I've been there. And hopefully maybe Todd can loosen him up. I mean,
yeah,
Todd's he's a lifetime 240 hitter. He's a streak hitter. He's got pop. They're going to insert him in there, and they're going to hope that he can loosen them up in that clubhouse.
Pete's season and the body language all season from him has just been a polar opposite of what it was last year. I noticed the same thing. Did you get a chance did you see DeGrom's reaction to when they asked him about Todd Frazier? Granted, no. DeGrom, like he was coming off a loss and he was pissed off. And a reporter says,
it's honorary.
Yeah. There's a reporter says, did you get a chance to hear the news that, Todd Frazier is being brought in? As opposed to what Alonso and McNeil have said, he was like, oh, no, that's the first time hearing of it. It's very different. So again, this is not coming from knowledge that I have of Todd Frazier, the teammate. I have heard that he rubs some people the wrong way and he's adored by some. But when you hear in baseball, like so-and-so is a great clubhouse guy, are you skeptical about that? Because not everybody can be liked by everybody, So just to say that someone is going to come into the clubhouse and suddenly turn the place around, I'm not sure that that's realistic more than that's just a media and a fan creation, Keith.
I'm not in that clubhouse all the time. And I don't know the inner workings, what it was like the last couple of years with Todd in that clubhouse. It's pretty apparent that McNeil and Alonso like him very much. And I thought originally when they traded for him, I said I wouldn't be surprised if some of the players maybe lobbied for him.
Yeah.
What general managers are today, they bounce things off the players today. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? In our day, you never saw the general manager. You just went out and played. So I had a suspicion that, Todd may have been lobbied for by a few players. And what I've read in the paper, I can only surmise. And that is that McNeil and Alonso are happy he's back. And if Alonso doesn't hit and McNeil doesn't hit, we had the big night, the 3-hit night in Baltimore the first night, signs of him coming around. Mets aren't going to win without Alonso and McNeil hitting. They're just not going to win. They're key. So what I see right now is people from the front office grasping for straws. This is the last Hail Mary here. They've got the Phillies coming in, and that's a 4-game series over the Labor Day weekend, correct? Is that correct? They got the schedule?
I'll have to check.
That's a big series. If it is Philly, right? Home?
It's home against the Phillies Friday, Saturday,
Sunday, Monday. That's huge. There's your Waterloo right there. There's your Waterloo. We'll see if it's Waterloo or Moses parting the Red Sea.
What's the vibe of a team that's struggling? Like you mentioned Pete Alonso coming off the field, and I've been there and empathizing with that feeling. Is it as bad in the clubhouse when you're struggling as it is for the fans at home, or do players kind of like, oh, that one's over, put that away and move forward?
I've been in clubhouses after losses where you can hear a pin drop. That is not good. We are not allowed in the clubhouse. There's no interaction. So I don't know. I would love to have been a fly on the wall and not to be eager to see people suffering and, down in the dumps, but just from a professional point of view, how this team is responding to this. Now, these guys went into the spring training thinking they were the cat's tail. And this game will knock you down a pace. It'll let you know it's not that easy. It certainly let McNeil know. It's let Alonso know. It's these guys work hard. I'm not saying that they take things for granted. You can do all the hard work, but it's a tough game. It's not that easy. And I don't know the tone and the atmosphere in that clubhouse on that team because we're not allowed to interact. It would be if I'm a writer, that's the one thing I would look for to see what's going on in that clubhouse. Coming in after a loss and there's dead silence. I've been there early in my career with the young teams too. I would like to see this team be a little less emotional and more professional on the day in, day out basis. None of this jubilation and pounding on and all this. It's fine to be joyous, but when you take a doubleheader from the Yankees, you go out like professionals. You stay right here. You don't do this, because when you get to the highest mountain emotionally, you cannot win every game. You're going to have periods where you hit the death valley. And that's, if you're up here emotionally, then you're down here. That is not going to cut it. You've got to stay here. If you're a professional team, okay, we swept the Yankees. We got 3 more games with them. We go out, shake our hands, and go about our business. It's a young team. I'd like to see them get a little more level emotionally. And you can still bring the same intensity in game.
I'm sorry to have to treat our listeners to the sound of the New York City sounds of a car alarm going off. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that, but it's been going on all morning. So you've been right from the beginning, even before the season started, about Alonso and McNeil, the cautionary tale that you've seen of 1 year of all-star, of stardom, of being a potential MVP rookie of the year type player, and thinking that that's going to translate to year 2. I mean, that wasn't just you being skeptical. That's not you being skeptical of those 2 guys personally.
Or negative.
Right. It's not you being negative. And I think that is so interesting to look back on. Where does that experience for you come from? Is that your own personal experience, or have you seen guys in your own career since the time you've been in the booth think that one season's just going to magically translate into another, even though you're right, they're hard workers? Where does that skepticism of yours come from?
From my own experience. My rookie season, I was touted and they traded Joe Torre. I was the heir apparent. That was the headline. And I was the starting first baseman. And I bombed out royally. After my first breakout year, I came up in my first full season where I broke camp was 75. I got sent down. 77 was really my first year. I hit 291. I drove in 91 runs. I hit 15 home runs. And the next year in 78, I hit 255. I had a good first half and a terrible second half. And I can't figure that out to this day. But there was expectation of me. And there's no expectation of you if, in Pete's case, as a rookie, Pete wouldn't have gone north if Sandy Alderson was the general manager out of spring training. He would have been in AAA. Brody brought him up. Who expected 52 home runs from Pete? Who expected 20? And he had this phenomenal rookie year. Now you go into where, don't forget, he's the face of the organization now too. He's done all these wonderful things in the community. He's been all gung-ho and really doing wonderful things, outside of the game, which I would rather see him stay focused on. That's something you can do as you become a star. But some people like to, do that. And he seems like he's one of those, and he's genuine. But the expectation now is you're going to be you're going to be a slugger, and you get off to a bad start. It's obvious he's pressing. They're jamming him to death and sawing him off. They're not letting him extend his hands. And I just read the article, I think it was Monday, where he said, I really feel like I'm taking good swings and I'm hitting in bad luck. Well, that's questionable. He has hit some balls hard, but he's also hit some clunkers, a lot of clunkers. But I'm taking good cuts, and I think he is. I really do. But I'm just fouling him back. Well, what does that tell you? There's very basics in this game. If I went through a stretch where I was hitting the ball in the air, and I'm not a home run hitter, I would get in BP and concentrate on the top half of the ball, get on top, hit line drives. You overcompensate. If I'm under the ball, then I've got to hit on top in BP, and that'll bring me back from this to maybe a little more this, and then I'll make solid contact. And I saw him the first, the 9-5 loss. He's got the photograph in the dugout looking at his swing. Get rid of that crap. Get rid of it. All that stuff's before the game, after the game. Watch the pitcher, how he's pitching. That's where you learn. The analytics will tell you, okay, pitcher A, he's got a great curveball, but he's wild with it. He throws it, da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, maybe that day, that pitcher's got command of his curveball. It's not written in analytics in stone. It's not the 10 Commandments. He may have his curveball that day. You got to watch. If he's getting it over, watch your right-hand hitter. Watch how they pitch the right-hand hitters. Is he getting his curve over? Okay. Does that mean now I'm going to go up there for analytics? He can't get it over, so I'm not going to swing at it? Or you got to make tactical decisions as the game progresses. You got to observe. And these guys, Conforto said in an interview too that I thought was, I stopped going down in the dugout after at bats and looking at the video. Screw that. It's the game. Sit on the bench and watch. Look at the video after.
Yeah. I can only imagine how difficult it is to hit a baseball in the major leagues. And then you add all that information, the preparation before and after at bats, and then add that to, a 95 mile an hour fastball and a snappy Tom, as you put it. So last week you mentioned that you thought it would potentially be good timing for Luis Rojas to, maybe chew out the team, light a fire under them. When you look back on your career, is there a moment, a manager, doing that to you in a clubhouse that you thought was particularly effective? Do you think, in your experience, that can be effective?
That's a great question. Yes and no. It depends on the circumstances. Do you like the manager? Do you respect the manager? You got a red ass manager you don't like, and here he goes again. I just think that I forget which game I said after what loss when they played poorly that it was worthy of it.
I think it was probably, again, this is a guess, but I'm guessing it was the JD Davis stealing third base birdie game that you thought remember that play that you called
against
embarrassing?
Whom? They were home. Right?
It was the Marlins at home. Yeah. It was when Birdie stole second, third, and home.
Right. And if you didn't chew him out, then certainly the first game of that doubleheader in Yankee Stadium, when they blew the 5-run lead, when they played poorly, with the second game coming. And sometimes you got to ream them out. But, Louis very low-keyed, like his father. He's a different style. And, you've got to be careful today, and you got to be careful in my day too. There was a lot of sensitive players out there that, you ruffle their feathers, they may, go crawl in a hole and not play for you.
You want to name names of anybody?
No.
I'm
not saying anything on this team.
No, I mean on your teammates. Any
no, I won't mention. I won't mention. There was plenty.
Jeff just texted me on the side because he doesn't want to unmute himself that we got Moses, the Red Sea, and the 10 Commandments in one show. So that
we're going biblical.
It has to be considered a success.
And then next will be Charlton Heston.
Let's do Reaction Revisited. This is from, let's see, Tuesday night. your pal Gary doing play-by-play had a pretty good call. We want to take a listen.
Jimenez is not a big guy, but he's got some pop. He's got 64 big league at-bats without a home run. This would be the perfect time and place. And he lays off the breaking ball from Eshelman, and it's 2-0.
Are you calling it, Gary? Is that what you're doing?
No. I'm just saying that at some point he's going to hit a ball out of the ballpark, and this ballpark tends to lend itself to long balls. And he's the tying run. He flies this one out to left, pretty well hit. Mountcastle back, and it's out of here. Andres Jimenez with his first major league home run. He goes the other way to tie the game. A 2-run shot for Jimenez, and it's 5-5 in the 6th. See?
Congratulations, my friend. Nostradamus.
Gary predicted. I mean, he
Gary's
denied. He just had a sense it was coming. Now, the conspiracy theorist in me would say that somehow, I know this is not true, but somehow you guys have like an early feed from Citi Field for an away game.
Oh.
And Gary's looking at the monitor before what we see, and he sees the home run. I know he's an honest man, so I know he wouldn't do that, but it's a hell of a call. And Jimenez, again, I'm not just, trying to make you feel smart, but you called it, that this guy was a better offensive player than maybe the scouting reports dictated, and that he had potential big league bat in him coming out of spring training. I mean, he continues to impress.
Well, he's kind of struggled of late, so it was good to see him hit the home run and not hit the home run. So
yeah,
he did over left center field fence, and it's a small ballpark there. That's why Gary made that call. It's a bandbox, Camden Yards. So I was happy he didn't pull the home runs, because a lot of young hitters get in the habit, hit a home run, and they start getting pull happy. He hit it the opposite field. This has been a great opportunity for him. He would not have had this opportunity if it wasn't for this season as such as it's with COVID. It's given him an opportunity to get his feet wet in the big leagues. We know one thing, that he's got a great glove. He's a smart player, heady player. He's fast. And there's my phone again.
Oh, there's the fax machine. They're trying to get you to. It's
all these people calling the polls. I never answer. I never use my house phone. It's got to be the.
You got to do what I do. The cable company charges me for a landline. I just don't have one. I don't have a phone plugged in.
You know what? I can do that too, because I can scan on my computer. I don't need the fax machine. But let's get back to the point. He struggled. Start throwing him breaking balls. He can hit breaking balls, but he's just getting his feet wet. Now, he never really hit that much in the minor leagues. He impressed the hell out of me in spring training with his glove. The question is, will he hit? And the book is not closed on that yet. And really, it's a test every year. You've got to hit every year. It's a sign of true greatness. Mm. And eventually, when you play every day, you'll find out who you are or what kind of player you are.
I can't wait to do the podcast with you after he falls in love with the home run ball, and
he won't. I think he's pretty disciplined young man. I really do.
Yeah. All right, Keith. Well, we'll let you get to those pollsters. We want to make sure you call them back and check your voicemail to see and you enjoy the rest of your cheese plate, which you've already, since I've begun wrapping the podcast. You dove back into it.
I got to go to the ball game. Too.
What type of cheese are you enjoying?
A Gouda right now.
Gouda? Gouda or Gouda? It's a nice sharp Gouda.
I wanted something sharp.
A little sharp. All right. So we'll be back next week with Andy and then Keith on Thursday. Please subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
And folks, it'll be next week. It'll be after the 4-game series with Philadelphia, and we'll know exactly where we are.
Waterloo. Or
the Red Sea.